Life is fleeting, transient, and even things that aren't living aren't permanent. No one is, nothing is. So the same goes for this show, right? And while we have it, we'd like to welcome you to the Leong Form podcast. I'm Hossan, together with my brother Stanley, and we want this show to happen because of the intrinsic good. It is as a vehicle to bring you conversations that matter because you matter.
You do indeed. And in season 2 of the podcast, we'll be exploring the theme, the turning point. Because life, as you know, right, never linear. You're cruising one direction, and then the next thing you know, you could slam the brakes, and then you're forced to avoid the monkeys on the roads, right? So, you think about changing trajectories, and it usually happens. Sometimes, these diversions are planned for, and sometimes they're not. Well, our guest, very familiar with turning points, evidenced not only in career changes of his own, but helping others turn the corner at his private practice when they're face to face with grief. So the question is, what is grief and how can we better understand it? And is there such a thing even as getting over the loss of someone or something?
Well, we'll find out in a moment from my very good friend, George Chan, counsellor, grief educator, and breathwork coach, who specializes in helping individuals navigate grief and loss through his private practice. This is how we heal. George has been in the arts and entertainment space for, over 3 decades. Lao liao.
Very lao liao.
And we work together in many stage productions like Forbidden City. Oh yeah, a lot of things.
This is the Hossan Leong show.
Yeah, the Hossan, he directed all my
Oh my
Hossan Leong
gosh.
show. And then Forbidden City, the Full Monty.
Into the Woods.
The Company.
The Company.
Okay, the list goes on. Anyway, what was his turning point in becoming a counsellor?
Yeah, and specifically looking at grief and loss. So I'm expecting this conversation to be somewhat heavy, but a needful one, George, because, we all know that sooner or later we will be, face to face with grief ourselves. It can't elude us. We can't elude it. But let's attempt to then maybe lighten the mood before we jump straight into our conversation today with George. And it's word association time.
Okay.
So that means I'll be saying a word, and then the first person who buzzes in, right, you get a chance to yell out a word that is associated with the word that I just mentioned. And then we continue with the next word and so on.
All right.
All right. So everybody got...
So fastest buzzer gets to say the word, huh?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. To start the chain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got the opening word.
Very competitive.
All right.
Very.
Ready?
Yes.
Tissue.
Auntie.
Beer.
Tiger.
Raw.
Beef.
Carpaccio.
Italian.
Pasta.
Mania.
Madness.
Counselling.
Therapy.
Podcast.
The Leong Form.
Today.
Tomorrow.
Forever.
Amen.
Like that is it, the game? How come you stopped playing?
Because your face very funny. You see George's concentration face. Today.
I cannot. I cannot play games. I'm very competitive.
Not bad.
Thank you for that. I mean, that warmed us up, I think,
fantastic.
to get our brains working.
Yeah, let's go now and have a break.
Yeah, and our tongues wagging.
Indeed.
Okay,
indeed.
I'm going to open this conversation with lyrics from a musical, which you're very familiar with.
Wow.
There's a grief that can't be spoken. There's a pain goes on and on. So from Les Mis, right? From theatre to counselling, George. Specifically grief counselling. What was that motivation? Because when you told us about it, I think a lot of us in our circle of friends went, huh? What happened? What was the turning point, George?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, I've been in theatre for the longest time, right? Over 3 decades being on stage as a performer, doing choreography, directing shows, even working with organization as a creative director. And on paper, it might seem like this dream career. I think in my mid-40s, I started to get stuck. Don't know whether it's the same experience. I was talking to my friends at 40, I just started feeling like, this hollowness, like it's like panic undercurrent. Like, what am I doing with my life?
It's the constant need to keep looking for work.
As
right?
a freelancer
As
too.
a freelancer.
For sure. And then when I kind of like join a company and work full time, I don't like it because I feel control. Right, then I leave. I feel like, I need stability again. And it's also having this sort of ball of energy to want to create and feel like you're very trapped. You know, and so I started getting angry and I was complaining a lot, and I didn't like that part about myself. Because usually I'll tell someone, you complain so much for what? Just leave lah. You have the choice. Don't complain. So I didn't like that part of myself, and I knew that I needed to change. I just didn't know what to move on to. Right. So in 2018, I found out. 2018 was a really tough year. I was dealing with a lot of personal losses. And my default way of coping, I ran away. I started actively sourcing for work outside of Singapore, and I saw a contract. I went for an audition. I got a job with a Cirque Soleil-ish kind of.
You went.
I went to Macau. Right, for a mega casino show, and I signed a contract for 2 years. I did not tell a lot of people. I just packed and disappeared. And I got there. It was a brand new environment. Right, it just created some kind of space for me to kind of, I thought I could come out better. But for the first time in my life, I couldn't find that sort of like jolly, happy me. Something was strange. Something was different. I was a bit weighed down. There was a certain hollowness. And the irony about this show was that, for those who know me, I'm terrified of heights. I'm terrified of heights.
Even though you're quite tall.
I'm the sort that can look down sort of like fifth floor from the parapet at HDB. I'll be like sweaty palms, trembling, palpating heart and all. And this show, for every one of my entrance, right, was an aerial stunt.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So can you imagine during full dress and tech run, right? I was dangling 25 meters above this theater. It was a specially built theater for the show. Dangling above the audience, kind of like in a harness and a rope. And I was up there sort of like still hollowed by grief, thinking about, if this rope breaks out, it's actually okay lah. I was having that kind of hopelessness and thought. And then suddenly I realized, my palms are not sweating. Why do I not have this palpation and this need to run away from here? Of course, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is a bit overwhelming, but I wasn't sort of like having that my usual fear of heights. And that really got me. I laughed up there, dangling in mid-air.
Can you imagine
right? Because tech run, right? You stay in one position for very long. So I was hanging there for the longest time. And I sort of burst out laughing to myself and say, you know what? Maybe this old dog can still learn a trick or two. Maybe there's more to me. I don't know. Maybe there's more to life. So that was a bit of my turning point. And I decided, okay, now I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to seek out help. So I found a therapist in Macau. Speaks Cantonese.
Oh, you
so the whole thing was in Cantonese.
The therapy was in Cantonese.
In Cantonese.
Wow.
So it was whole leg. So it was very refreshing. But so bit by bit, I started to sort of get better, right? But I also started getting very curious because I always knew that therapy was healing and was helpful, but I did not know that it was creative. Because this Cantonese therapist, she was really good. She was also a somatic therapist. So she tapped into what I knew best, doing with the body. So it was about voice, about breath work. It was about movement, about your speaking voice and about writing. It was very interesting. So we kind of had this kind of collaborative kind of discovery together. And so after that, I was like, okay, I feel so much better and it really helped. So what can I do with it? I want to do something with this thing that I've learned. But I'm also like, how I stuck in 2 years contract leh. And I might not just wait. And then, twist of fate, the show got cancelled.
That's
The
right.
show got cancelled.
No,
it wasn't
pre-COVID.
COVID. It was
Still before
pre-COVID.
COVID.
So the show got cancelled for some reason I can't disclose that because a lot of money they can. So they decided, no, we're not going to have the show and send me home because I signed a 2-year contract. I got some compensation.
Oh, good.
And also because I pushed away so many shows because of the contract, I'm like, now I can do something. And one of the things on my bucket list was to go back to school, right? Because I got to A-levels, never got to university. Couldn't afford to back then. So now I could. So I did. So I went back to take my master's in psychotherapy, advanced counselling, and
Here in Singapore.
in Singapore with Flinders University. So a lot of it was in person, but also online.
Okay.
It's a mix of both. And I graduated last October as academic student.
Wow.
I
that's
know.
right.
Can you imagine?
Competitive.
So I'm really proud of that.
Good.
And then, so immediately after that, I opened up my own private practice. This is how we heal. And I knew that I wanted to work on grief and loss. So,
And I guess the big driver was the fact that you had embraced therapy yourself, you saw transformation and healing within that journey that you had undertaken. And therefore, you probably realized, wow, this is tremendous value for so many other people that you could actually use to help.
And I also think it triggered one of my earlier passions, because when I was much younger in school, I used to volunteer. I used to volunteer for Changi Hospital Ward C, as you remember. Going, and what we could do was only feed patients, talk to them, and change diapers. The geriatric ward. So I remember doing that. It was really hard work, but I always kind of walked out with a bounce in my step, feeling like this is meaningful.
That's you,
Yeah.
It's your DNA.
Yeah. So I guess that's how it kind of came back full circle, and I felt like doing this felt natural. It was almost that discovery that got me quite excited, like a child, feeling like, oh my God, it is this now. So I started that journey.
But you haven't really stopped theatre though. I mean, because a lot of misconceptions in the industry is like George has stopped acting or singing or whatever.
What a waste of talent.
Yeah, exactly. No more Fosse moves from George. But you haven't you? You
I haven't.
So
in fact, this year I'm sort of directing 3 shows.
Oh, wow.
On stage for 2. So I had this very black and white thinking. It's very me, like, you know what? I'm gonna it's a new journey. Leave the old George behind and just watch forward. New chapter. I always had that mindset. Leave theatre, go towards therapy. And today I can just say how the two have really just merged seamlessly.
how does the experience in theatre help you with your counselling?
Yeah, are there transferable skills?
For sure. And also because theatre has, I always think storytelling is such one of the oldest form of healing, right? We performers, we go on stage, we kind of put our emotion into crafting and weaving this story of love and fear and loss and pain. And someone in the audience watches us and they go, hey, I see myself in that story, right? The connection and the recognition is profoundly healing. It makes them feel like I'm not alone, maybe someone else goes through this too. And I'm just doing the same in therapy. Rather than tell a story, I'm helping the client find meaning in theirs, helping them tell their story. So in that sense, there's always that parallel, and all the skills that I have from theatre, about presence as actors, staying present on stage, being with someone. That's what happens in the therapy room, and also a sense of empathy, and also being able to read the subtext, right, underneath a line, or be able to read someone even when they're not talking. Just by the way they breathe or by the way their shoulders kind of goes into a defiant slouch. We can kind of read those things. I think a lot is because of our background as choreographers, as directors.
You can see body language.
Visual, non-visual.
Yeah, you read underneath what's the word there.
And communicator as well.
And we stay very curious. And interesting is when I was studying, right, I think on the first week of that course, the teachers would say, like, okay, all of you have to think of what are the most important sort of traits of a counselor, right? So everybody will go for the empathy and your intuition or your compassion. And after being in this line for a while, I would say the top thing for me is creativity. Creativity is at the top of my list for being a counselor because every client is so different. They come in, you can't just apply the textbook wisdom right into it and say, there's step 1 to 5, and then you have to do this. It doesn't work that way. You have to be present and you have to really just move with them and find ways of how am I going to connect? How can I find a language that we can kind of go back and forth?
Or just break the ice, because some may come in with very high walls or very thick walls.
Yep, for
and
sure.
you got to go try to get around it or go through it or bore through it.
For sure. So you go forth with courage and creativity.
Okay. Let's look at it through a magnifying glass now, or microscope rather.
Yeah.
Grief. That's your thing. Grief counseling. So help us understand what grief is. How do you define it? Are there different types of grief? What does it mean? Because grief is such a nebulous word.
Yeah. I guess to define it simply, grief is a change you did not want.
Right.
Right? It is any significant shift in somebody's life that kind of creates this deep sense of loss. And that loss can be a bereavement, a loss of someone we love. It could be the loss of your health, a change in your health. It could be the end of a relationship. And it can also be something very intangible, like the purpose.
Yeah.
Right, like safety, your sense of safety. Yeah, so it's really different. And I remember even in COVID, the pandemic, we talked about it just now. It was this collective grief that we're all going through, right?
Right.
No more toilet rolls. No, not that kind of grief.
Right. But all of us were kind of like going through some kind
Loss
of
of
loss.
freedom.
Loss of freedom, loss of connection, loss of what's normal, normality, loss of work. Right? Loss of your sense of identity, what you believed in for a long time, being told that it doesn't matter, it's non-essential. That kind of loss,
yes,
right?
yes, yes,
I've certainly felt it. And so that was a collective loss that all of us did not expect and most of us did not want. Yeah.
So it's quite a overarching
It's layered.
word, right?
It's
Very
layered.
layered. Yeah.
You might think that it's just grief, it's just bereavement. Many people think that way, but I
Yes.
see clients for all kinds of loss.
Yeah. I mean, it could be relationships and all, you know, it could be a job
Yeah.
or even being scammed of your savings.
Yeah. But even underneath the grief itself, there's also different kinds of grief. You know, you can kind of like grieve someone before you lose someone. Right? You can be something we call...
Explain that to us.
Like we call it anticipatory grief. And I work with clients where I have a client, and I do this on my Mandarin radio show. I always bring a case and we talk about it. A client, and we probably can relate to this too, parents getting older. So father passed away, she's with a mom. Mom was a strong businesswoman in her youth, great relationship, older with dementia. So mom is still there, but she's mourning every day thinking about, I'm going to lose you.
I see.
You're my last connection. A big part of it is also when you're gone, I'm next in line for the grave. So I've got to think about my own mortality. It's a lot of fear. So it's layered, anticipatory grief. And so, you know, I usually tell a client like that, don't attend the funeral early.
Don't attend the funeral early.
I mean, she's still here with you,
I
your
see,
mom.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so when she's
So
here,
celebrate life.
what can you do? You know, how can you use this moment to still think of your connection? You know, so one of the things I usually tell my client, I'm no expert. I'm not an expert. I've just happened to a person that studied grief, lived it, and also happened to have clients every day to have the privilege of talking about grief. So I usually say everything we do together is an experiment. And I gave him an experiment. I say, maybe the next time you go into the room with your mom sitting next to, because she always does that. The mom's sleeping, she sits there, pray, and she cries. And I say, next time maybe when you go and just turn your chair around and back face her and see if you don't have to see her, can you still feel her presence? And what do you want to say to her in that moment? It's that Chinese cultural thing. One of the top things she wanted to do was, I want to be able to tell my mom I love her. But Chinese families, but I just can't seem to do it. And I say, then back face her and write about it. So she started doing a lot of writing, and she comes into the session sharing that with me. And eventually, somehow that allowed something to flow. Eventually, she was able to express that love to her mom, not through those exact words like, I love you, mom, but through many, many other ways.
Right. That's beautiful.
So it seems that we can almost process grief in different ways. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of prescriptive, okay, do this, and after, you know, by day 31, you should be all right.
Yeah. I guess when we first study grief, right, when we first tell we want to be a grief counselor, one of the things you do immediately get baptized in is the 5 stages of grief. Right, be told, okay, grief, you can go with this way of healing someone. There's this structure, there's this mortality, there's this a technique that you can use. But like you mentioned too, grief is not linear. I think everybody grieves differently. Grief is as unique as our fingerprint. We all have our own process. So what works for someone might not work for you. So a lot of times it is really in finding, being creative, like, you know, how can we talk about grief? Yeah.
But if I may, going back to that example of that lady who had a mother who had dementia. Even day to day, if you have someone with, you know, living with dementia or Alzheimer's, day to day they're losing more and more of themselves.
Every day you deal with tiny losses,
right? And that can be so, I guess, so stressful and so discomforting for one who's seeing a loved one slowly disappear, at least cognitively, before their eyes.
Yeah.
And that's grief too, isn't it?
For sure, it is. It's a long journey to work with. And sometimes I also remind my clients that how we remember a person is not this moment where they're lying in bed with dementia. What about the rest of their life? Tell me their story.
Good. Yeah.
That opens up. We don't, for a person who has passed on, sometimes all that's in our mind is that we think of that final punctuation mark in the book that defines a person. But a person, we also have different chapters with them.
Course.
Sometimes memory can be a wonderful thing if we kind of pull them in from different places.
How do you deal with it? Because as a counselor, I mean, because you are sitting there talking to so many different individuals about grief.
Yeah.
How do you, as a person, then go, okay, I need a break now, or yourself? Because mentally, it could, and emotionally, you're also investing.
Yeah. I think you really have to create your own self-care plan that works for you.
Right.
When I first went into counselling, I journal a lot, right? So I kind of had this notebook and I put on two sides, things I would like to explore. I knew that I definitely like to serve the LGBTQ plus community. That's one of the things I wanted to do for sure. And on the other side were things that I don't think I can do. It just doesn't resonate. One was children. I think it's a special skill set. I just can't do it. Second thing is grief and loss. I did not want to do it because I was like, I can't. I said,
look where you are now.
I said, I'm happy. I want to, I don't think I can be weighed down in a room feeling like I'm trapped there and having that grief kind of like stay on me. I just couldn't imagine it. And then when I started studying, we kind of had to go and be interns in some way, right? We had to go and serve
hours, right?
We have to clock hours.
Yeah.
We could have practicum hours. You have to clock certain hours in order to say, okay, you can pass. So I had to clock 60 hours and I went out looking and I knew that, okay, LGBTQ plus organization was where I was heading. So I served at a few places. One was an old folks home. So I was working with a lot of seniors. Second place was Singapore Action for AIDS, right? Wonderful, wonderful organization doing fantastic work. So I knew that I wanted to work there. So with Action for AIDS, I was, one of the branch I was counseling were those who were newly diagnosed, right? So newly diagnosed, they come immediately to me. So the initial shock and all that, we have that chat. And both these places, the care home and AFA, it was so heavy with grief. In different ways, right? There was, in one hand, the senior home had a lot of sense of abandonment. Who am I? I'm not worthy. What's the point of living? A lot of them have lost their spouse. That's why they're there, right? That's that holding of that space. And then on the other side was AFA. It's not just about simple, I come in, I lost my health, something has shifted. With that shift comes shame and guilt. And a lot of my LGBTQ plus clients have not even been able to come out about their sexuality. How can I even tell my partner or my parents about my diagnosis? Right? So it's so heavy, it's so loaded. I somehow thrived in that space. I sat with them and I loved it. I loved that kind of little support I could give. I felt I was competent in that space. It's a strange thing. You just felt like you could hold space comfortably. And maybe it's an actor thing. It's about stepping on stage and being able to, do we bring our characters off stage after the show ends? Somehow we put on a cloak. We are totally in the moment, 100% committed to what we do on stage. When we step off, we remove that coat. And we're able to keep living. Maybe it's part of that theatre that has kind of helped me in terms of my
self-care. But that's also your personality, George. You have a beautiful soul. No, it's true. You also know how to comfort people. You are, in a sense, a healer. People feel very, okay, if you don't lose your temper, feel very comforted around you, Because, you are strict when you choreograph or whatever, but you're fun yet, and you are like a cotton wool ball.
Right? Say more?
Yes, it needs explanation.
You know what I mean? Cotton wool ball, comforting. Yeah, very soothing, No, but it's you. I've known you for so many years, and I can, now that you explained it the way you do, I see that. You see?
And it has nothing to do with, of course we study, we know the techniques and all that. I can tell you my first client, that old lady who kind of lost her husband, dealing with grief, it was nothing from textbook. I was just being with her. I remember those early days, I was like, because this first client of mine lost her husband. All that she was telling the organization was, I don't want to live. I want to be with him. And so because the client spoke Cantonese, again, I was like, I'm the only one. Okay, so I go.
You got a niche, man.
Got a niche. So I was worried. I didn't know what to do. And maybe I don't have to know too much and just have that space with her. So those initial moments were really nothing much to say. All she was talking about was that spiral of, I need to leave early. What's the point of living? I want to be with him. And then as we progress, I was thinking, how can I take her out of this world and get her to talk more about her other parts of her life? And I discovered that she and her husband, ex-husband, used to be with her. They love listening to Chinese classic evergreen songs. So I told her, every time you come in, we'll listen to one song, all right? Let's start the 10 minutes just listening to a song. How about that? That's a start. So we did. And I would sort of curate this playlist, and the song would be, let's say, 1944. And I would say, hey, 1944 song, right? It's 马路天使 from Gerlan. And she'll guess that she's really, really good because that's her passion. And I found that common language. And then I said, so 44, you were like, what age? 16? How were you like at 16? And she was like, as a young girl, I would. So that started opening up her world. So every time I went, there would be a song from a different era.
Nice.
Eventually, I'll talk about her when she was not even born yet. And she said, I'm not born. Tell me about your parents. And then she started talking about her grandfather who taught her calligraphy. She had a brother who cared for her. Her world started opening up. Eventually, I did talk about her husband, picking a song that was when I knew that it was the year she got married. And she said, my husband had an affair. I nearly wanted to leave him, but for the sake of the children, I stayed. So bit by bit, this image of a husband started having more color. It wasn't just this person I love, I needed to die and be with, but he also had his faults. He also has his strong thing. In the relationship, they had his ups and downs.
Of course.
It just allowed her to grieve in a different way, more fully, more completely. So, and did I apply anything from my textbook? I did not. I simply listened and helped her tell her story.
Yeah, I mean, the way you put it, I'm sure it's not as easy as any of us just being able to sit down with someone who's grieving and just be silent and play music and then that person heals. I'm sure it's not like that, but you make it sound so easy. But surely there would be things that any of us, I'm sure we are always around people who would have suffered loss in one way or other.
Yeah.
What are simple things that we can do? And I know there are a lot of tips actually on your website. I went through your website and, things to say, things not to say at the funeral wake. And some people think they're helpful with their comments, but sometimes it can work the other way. But what are simple things that we can do, say, with someone who is grieving apart from holding space and keeping silent?
We live in such a grief illiterate society. We don't know what to say. We freeze up. Even in wakes and funeral now, we're like, okay, we better tiptoe around, right? Be very careful. We're worried about saying the right or wrong thing. Sometimes just your presence, just by being there, makes a difference. Right? I think this sense of witnessing is so powerful. What is witnessing? It's just being there and letting the person know that I see what you're going through. And sometimes we don't have to say much. I remember reading this kind of interesting ritual from one of the northern indigenous tribes in Australia, right? They have got this grief ritual. That's interesting. So when someone in the village passes away, on the night, every family in the village moves a piece of their furniture onto the front porch or the lawn. So the next morning, when the bereaved family wakes up and opens up the window and looks out, they can see that the world has changed. Nothing's the same anymore. And that has moved me so much when I read it, because it's their way. They don't have to go and knock on their door and say things. They're just telling them, we see your pain. Wow. We are with you. And that's something that we can all learn. Just witnessing and being with someone, it's powerful.
So actions can sometimes speak louder than words.
For sure. And I remember watching this podcast about, quite interesting, about these two friends, two best friends. One have just lost his partner, right? And both of them are running buddies. So they go in the morning runs together, jogs together. And so one of the good friend was telling his other friend who has gone through the loss to say, you know what, every morning at 8 o'clock, I'll still be running. Even without you, I'll just run past your block, right? I'll just always pass your block at 8 o'clock, right? So if you feel good enough, come down and join me. If at 8 o'clock you're not there, I'll keep running and it's okay. I thought that was so beautiful. It's just giving there. Space and say when
you're being there as well.
Beautiful. So we don't have to. Sometimes it's hard because one of the things I used to say a lot to my friends would be like, if you need anything, tell me. I usually say that loud.
I say that a lot.
But
You say
sometimes
that
it's
a
like,
lot.
What's
do
wrong with
people
that?
really tell you? I still have
Yeah,
to
that's
spend time thinking of what I need to tell you. Most people wouldn't reach out. So now I learn to be a bit more specific. If a person's at awake, I'll say, I know it's a long night. I bring you coffee, okay? I'll be a bit more specific, and now
okay,
I help.
yeah.
That seems to be
Something practical that doesn't need a lot.
already the person is quite loaded. Like you
Of
don't
course,
need
a
to
lot
have
of
them
things in
think
their
like what
head.
I need. I have to
Yeah, what
tell
I
you.
need.
Yeah. And chances are they probably would feel like, no, I don't want to.
I don't want to
Yeah.
impose.
on you,
paise.
right?
Our culture is like that.
Yeah.
I tell you that whole sense of my sadness, I don't want to show too much. It means weakness, or I don't want to burden people. That's been what we have learned.
Having said that, though, does it help if we shared it, or is it maybe personally everybody's different? But does it help in general to share the
Your grief when you're going through
Yeah.
it? For sure.
Keep it private.
I think we're not little islands of grief. I think we need to kind of connect in order to kind of heal, right? There's this sort of like this whole idea of mirroring neurons when sort of like a little baby and the mother smiles, the baby will kind of like smile. They did this whole exercise back then, right? So there's something about mirroring each other, and I think it's the same in grief. I remember in the morning when I walked Luna, I walked past the kopitiam, right? With the
Luna
uncle.
is your
Luna's my dog.
Yes,
my
tell us more
adopted
about
dog.
Luna.
You know Luna, right? So I walked
Yes.
Luna past the kopitiam. The uncles, sometimes the same uncles would sit there and they were like, hey, chalao boy. And I was like,
to the dog or to you?
to me, yeah. And then somehow I'm not Hokkien, I'll be like, chalao, you know? But it's not about the language. It's about acknowledging each other in that space.
Yes.
It's that kind of mirroring, you see. I think it's the same in grief. We all want, somehow we need this grief to be shared and seen. And that's part of witnessing. And I think in sharing, it really does help talk about it. The first thing I ask my clients when they come in a lot of times would be, in the first session, the first question I might ask is, for someone going through bereavement is, what's their name? What's their name? Something small, but it kind of shifts it from seeing the person as a loss to someone, you know, and what they meant to them, you know, who they are, the love that remains.
I think it's important too to share that. To share grief, loss of whatever, a job, your health, so that other people, you have kind of a support mechanism too, in a sense. But then there could be too much support too. Every day the phone call, need anything? Then so there's some boundaries must be set too. But I do agree. I think grief and loss has to be shared. So
But can we not tell people what we need sometimes? I don't know lah. Sometimes we
Can
actually, if you're going through it, you can actually say, you know what's going to help me. We can actually say it.
Either you know, I need to be alone. It's something that you also can say, but you've shared that grief so that people know that you need to be alone, rather than why you never call me? Not knowing that you are going through something.
Happens, right? Where sometimes when, I was just going through this thing with Valentine's Day, all the friends are like all coupled up and there's a single friend and feeling miserable.
Capitalism.
Can you go online and do shopping? No, I'm kidding.
That would not be coping, that would be numbing. Right? But, you know, sometimes we're like, why do you just tell us what you need? Maybe you tell us, Valentine's coming, it's going to be really hard on me, huh? So maybe just lunch is okay, lunch and a coffee. And after that, I think I'll spend some time on my own going to the spa. But at least you tell us what you want rather than not say anything and then later say, hey, why y'all don't care about me? But sometimes you need to just communicate.
Just put it out there.
Communicate. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice that you mentioned numbing and coping. Okay, so what are possible numbing strategies that we sometimes employ in order to suppress the grief that we may face?
I guess numbing would kind of be anything that you choose as distraction, right? Something that kind of like takes you away from what you need to look at.
Right, like finding a job and moving to Macau.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
I was
so that's
definitely
one-
running,
okay.
right? Or it could be sort of like alcohol or any kind of thing that kind of takes you away from it. It could even be going to the gym. Sometimes we think, you look at self-help book, they'll say, you know what you can do, go for long walks, go to the gym, have a workout, have a sweat. What if that becomes your numbing mechanism?
Right.
Right.
So it's
I
like
think
escapism?
I think it's very different from each person. So you're
It's
saying,
like escapism as well.
I think there's a difference between coping and numbing. I think coping is just creating that space around the grief, something that flows, so that you can kind of say, okay, there's grief there's space to mourn, there's space to connect, there's space to share and talk about my pain. And numbing is kind of like just bearing it and not looking at it.
Yeah, the pain is still there. Just don't feel it for that.
There's this
temporary-
great saying in grief that whatever you kind of run from will pursue you. Eventually you catch up. But what you stand to face will transform you.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's
There's
not your
this-
quote, right?
It's not my quote.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a quote from this grief expert called David Kessler. And he defined grief in such how we cope in such a wonderful way. He used the analogy of buffaloes. I know, I all right, buffaloes.
Bill.
Bill.
Buffalo's Bill.
Buffalo's bill. So no, that's beak. Anyway, so he talked about so interesting buffaloes, right? When a herd of buffaloes sees an impending storm, what do?
They
run
go
away.
under
No,
the
they
tree.
face it.
Yeah, most
I
run
have no
away,
idea
but
what they do.
buffaloes run towards the storm.
Oh,
so
what's
that they
wrong with them?
shorten. Yeah, I know, but because it shortens the amount of time they stay in the storm.
Oh, I
So that's
see.
an interesting way of looking at it.
Okay. So storm's coming.
They run
running
towards it. So
they pass through it.
pass through it
So
faster.
we make it faster.
Yeah,
both ways.
well, faster, but also being
lah,
able to say,
shorter.
I'm going to go towards it.
Right,
I'm going to face it. I'm going to sit in this feeling of what it is. And a lot of that is how I choose to work with grief. And that
be
is
a
to say,
buffalo.
we need to face it.
Face
You know, and facing it meant sometimes that all the barrage of the emotions could be knocking at your door, your fear, your regret, your guilt, your pain, your sadness. What if we let them in one by one and get to know them a little bit better? What's underneath the anger? It is in this getting to know that perhaps they don't have to keep revisiting us.
Okay, let's all remember the bull run.
The bull, the buffaloes.
the thick skin.
Yeah.
From outside in, for example, right, you're looking at someone and go like, okay, something's not right with this person. I want to help, but so when should these alarm bells go? What kind of changes do you observe in people who are going through grief silently and you want to help? How does that work?
I guess if I look at my own example, I think there was that sense of hopelessness. There was that sense of like, I can't function. I don't feel like I'm functioning at home or at work. Right, so that's one.
But we didn't know. Our friends couldn't tell.
True.
Right.
Right, I was putting up such a good front, but I knew, so I knew that I needed help. But
So
a lot
how
of times,
did I value how I was going to help you if I didn't know?
yeah.
Right.
So I guess it will be you could look for some of the alarm bells of like, the person is kind of like looking at numbing mechanisms,
Okay.
right? A lot of escaping, not facing it. Or the person could stop wanting to come out and meet and connect and talk.
Yes.
Or not even talk about the grief and loss, right? So those could be some of the signs. But like you say, everyone is so different, right? Someone like me could show no sign because I choose not to show weakness. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but just noticing things like I have a friend who stopped posting on social media, and at one time she used to be quite regular, so I decided to just drop her a message and ask her if everything was okay. Can we meet up? Still silence. I'm still trying to see how I could reach out to her, but just small little observations like that, like should trigger hopefully alarm bells within us. Like I haven't seen that person post for a long time. Is there something?
yeah, I guess it's
happening?
also how well you know the person, right? Your sense of how that is like. You also have people who constantly post that they're not all right. Then you're like, hey, you're constantly posting a black page. Like, should we worry? So it's how well you know that person. You got to read that language, I suppose. Yeah.
Can I just go macro now, right?
Yeah.
Singapore this year, 2025, has seen an increase in violent crime. Okay. I mean, outrage of modesty has gone up by 800 cases, rape by 233, knifing 75 cases. Now, all these things that are happening in Singapore elicit grief, right? So how do we look in and see the grief and because all this will end up someone having a loss of something. Why do you think this is happening in this society, and the people who have to go through it? It's very hard, right, for them. Like, I mean, this is a rhetorical question.
I think we all want to constantly look at what is pretty and flowery and beautiful, right? Social media is one, right? I started social media only a year ago because I never liked it.
Yeah, you were never on social media.
I was never on social
Where's
media.
George Chan?
So, but that's the tough thing. We always think that the pretty things are what we need to show the world.
Yeah.
When what's brewing underneath could be tougher stuff. Recently, I proposed a show for a cultural festival, right? And I wrote a show about grief, right? And about dying. Because I really think culture is that. Celebration can be that too, finding how to carry on after a loss.
Yeah.
Right? So I wanted to put my client's story together and propose it. And it was turned down because it was deemed as not celebratory enough.
Because it was dark.
Yeah.
Or dark in a sense.
Yeah, so in some sense, if we refuse to look at all these, then how will we ever understand what is happening with our society? If we only want to look at the beautiful, the fusion, Chan Mali Chan, all that, that's all we want to, then what about these? These are our culture too.
These are real stories.
The curve of a coffin, the way we serve food at a wake, these are culture too. We should get to know them. But yet death has moved so far from our lives that we do not want to look at it. Death and whatever that is dark and dangerous. You know, even ages ago, I know our living room used to be called a parlor room because the body used to be placed at home, right? During our great-grandfather's age, so that family and friends would come to the home and be with this family and have this body in the house, right? But as time goes by, death moves further away from us. We pushed it further and further away from us because we don't look at it, right? It's scary. But there is a need to do it. There's a need to understand it.
Absolutely. I think dealing with grief in that way sometimes is also the tangible part of it. Because when Auntie Maureen passed on,
About 13 years ago, our dad's sister.
Yeah, elder sister. And I was asked to go to the home, right? She was there, laid out. And
In the dining room.
in the dining room, not the parlor. but my mom, because one of Auntie Maureen's wishes was, the jade bangle was to be given to my cousin. But my mom couldn't get it out. So asked me to help. So I've never touched a body before, right? And I didn't know what to do. But having the tangible, doing it, the action of holding her hand and sliding the bangle off was very healing for me. So, in fact, at the funeral, I was okay because, I loved her. She's my aunt. But I was like, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it was because of that, I think.
That moment. Almost
where
like that little ritual, something that you did.
And it was just very simple.
Beautiful.
You know?
Yeah, when my dad passed too, I was with him when he drew his last breath. I sang. I sang all the songs he used to sing to me when I was young.
Nice.
So, and those are moments I hold so much. And I guess he's been away for more than a decade.
Yeah.
I still miss him now.
Of course.
But the interesting grief is now I remember him with more smile than tears.
Yeah.
Right?
And sometimes, especially when people have led amazing lives, happy lives, we celebrate that. Yes, we will miss them, but then I think, I guess we're coming alongside this next question, like, can we minimize grief? I guess are these some of the things we can do?
Do we need to?
To minimize grief?
Because what is grief? I mean, grief, pain, I think, is a natural response from the loss, right? It is also a natural response from the love, right?
Yes.
How painful it is because you love the person so much, right? So I don't know if we need to minimize it. And sometimes when I try to kind of tell my clients about what it means to sit in grief, what it means to be with this grief, what it means to not move on, but move through and be with. I like to use stories, right? Theater. And I remember when I was working in Europe always came across as very traditional and old architecture, right? I always enjoyed it. And then when I was doing a touring show, I went to Hamburg in Germany. I was like, quite new and young, very different, the architecture. And then when I was going through my grief education study, I learned that it was because Hamburg was heavily bombed during World War II. So the whole city had to be rebuilt from scratch. So the buildings were all new, right? But in the city center stood the second highest structure in the whole city. It was a St. Nikolai Church in its ruined glory, left that it was after the bombing. as served as a memorial and also to remind people of this piece of history. And grief's a bit like that. I think in all of us, we hold a piece of ruin of someone who has passed that stays there. We don't forget it. We don't move away. We don't want to remove it or discard it.
No.
It is there to honor and to remember that person. And just like the city of Hamburg, we can still grow around it. Right, bit by bit, we can still find new joys,
That's a beautiful
make little
analogy.
discoveries. And that's why I tell my client what it means to be with the grief and sit with it. It doesn't mean erasing and forgetting this person. It just means being with. It's a ruin, but it's a beautiful ruin of yours. And
That's
it's going
an
to be there, and we
important
can
thing.
still grow. So grief doesn't get smaller over time. We get bigger.
Okay. Well, if people who are watching and listening want to get in touch with you, for example, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can go onto my website. This is howweheal.com.sg.
So www.thisishowweheal.com.sg.
Or they can look me up on Instagram.
Josh Chan's on Instagram.
1 year later. Yeah, I do have Instagram.
1 year later.
Yeah, so it's this.is.we.heal. Sorry, I'm terrible
No,
with
it's
this.is.how.we.heal.
We got script, that's why we're reading it out.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
So they can find me there. And even if you don't feel like you might not be ready to talk to someone, go on and read some articles and see if there's anything that helps you. Yeah.
Because you are very active on LinkedIn as well.
I wouldn't say active,
I mean,
but
I read your posts all the time.
And he's got great blog entries as well, which you can find a link to from his website.
on the website as well. And you are also on radio.
I am. I am. So I'm on Mandarin Radio, Capital 958. So I go on and talk about grief every month, and I sing. I end the segment singing, so that as a means of bridging theatre and therapy, people can kind of listen and reflect. Yeah, and I always stress that the program is not about maybe discovering solution, just feeling that you're not alone. That there's some companionship.
That's great. Well, thank you, George, for sharing with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad I made it.
Yeah, good, finally. It's so great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for listening and watching us, the Leong Form with Stanley and myself. And we got our next episode coming up as well.
That's right. And you can find out all about episodes past and present. And no, you won't get the future ones yet because we haven't posted it. But you can always find them on podcast, Spotify, of course, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. Just search The Leong Form.
All right, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.